So as you guys probably read the title, it's been very frustrating lately being a Visual Kei fan. I am always constantly trying to find new groups to listen to. It just seems at this point that I can't find any groups that I like. Kizu is the most recent band I feel like I've gotten into. I think they're a dime a dozen. A dime a dozen? I don't think a dime a dozen. I think a dime a dozen is the opposite of what I'm talking about. A diamond in the rough. Rough? What is a rough? They're special, but it's been just very, very difficult to find good Visual Kei music lately. Bands can come out, they can look aesthetically pleasing. You can see previews of the PVs and everything could look HD, which is wonderful because, you know, we had to watch videos in like 480p. It's an upgrade in that sense, but it just seems like the music is just terrible. I can't seem to find anything good. If you guys have any bands to recommend, please let me know, because I'm suffering. Like, I'm thirsty for new music, particularly Visual Kei music. There's so many things to love about Visual Kei, but it's just so hard to find good music nowadays. The phrase Visual Kei is dead has been going off like a beacon in my head. Maybe it's dead. Maybe that's why you can't find anything. Maybe it's dying. Even though some of Gen Z is exploring this newer Visual Kei sound, majority of the older Visual Kei fans that I've been talking to aren't really feeling newer Visual Kei bands that are coming out of Japan. As some people probably know from some of my content, at least on my TikTok, I don't just let that be the end all be all of my thought process. I try to think deeply about why I feel the way that I feel. As I've gotten older and I've started traveling to other countries more, I've started to try to see the perspective of people that are different than me rather than just hopping to conclusions, especially if we're talking about stuff that comes from another country. I have a lot to say about this idea that Visual Kei is dead. A lot of people really do hold that sentiment, but I'm going to discuss the reason why I think things are the way they are now with Visual Kei compared to how they were when we were growing up. An important fact to start off with is the fact that Visual Kei was inspired by Western music. Classic rock, glam rock, all these different genres, goth, post-hardcore, metal, new metal, power metal, progressive. They were taking all of these elements into the scene. Punk, emo, all of that stuff came from the West. I think of Visual Kei as an accumulation of many different styles that come from alternative music cultures. There was a lot of experimentation mixed in there, things that were just culturally Japanese mixed in there. When you combine that with spectacular performance, you got all the visuals down, of course it's going to fascinate people. It's the perfect package. Not only was it rock, not only did it heavily rely on all of these alternative aesthetics, it bumped it up to a notch to the point where it was scary for some people. I think the thing that I never really thought about was that even though Visual Kei bands did admire Western music, their audience, first and foremost, was always going to be Japanese. Their intention was never to replicate it so that they could appeal to a Western audience. If a Western audience was drawn to their music, that was considered kind of like a plus, like, oh my God, we're getting recognition from other countries outside Japan. The music did end up spreading all over the world, and I thoroughly believe it's because despite the Japanese language, there was the help of anime introducing Japanese things into Western culture, but the sound translated to a Western audience. People were comfortable with the sound. So that's the reason why they were open to listening to these bands. Not that I didn't believe that growing up, it's just I never put any thought into it. Me in 7th grade, middle school is basically just enjoying the benefits of some Japanese band dudes in Japan being in love with System of a Down and deciding to just make some music. So not only did you have Japanese bands playing a sound that my ears already loved, they also looked amazing. Presentation, the style, the aesthetics were on point. It was like our alternative styles that we had going on bumped up to the highest degree. Now the world has changed. We're all growing up. I find myself in a spot similar to people when I was younger who would complain about how they miss classic rock. Bands like Led Zeppelin, they don't make them like that anymore. This is how it feels to miss something, and just know that it's never going to return to that. And I think millennials in general, we're experiencing a lot of that. Even when it comes to American bands, I don't know how Europe is doing because I kind of took a backseat to European rock. But even when it comes to the American rock scene, it's very lackluster. A lot of it's like indie, but it's not the sound. You guys know what sound I'm talking about. So sometimes I'll go to those Visual Kei bands and I'll want that sound. When I don't hear it and I hear something that's just crazy, like the craziest form of electronic rock combo with a little bit of hip hop mixed in there. When I find that sound, I become super frustrated because they have the same aesthetic that I loved as a kid. They even have it in HD because the quality is better, but the sound that they're making doesn't reach me. I don't know if the newer generation even likes that sound. I have introduced some younger people to Visual Kei bands and they're like, oh my God, I've never heard anything like this before in my life. And my mind is blown because it's like, what? Dadaroma, I was showing somebody, I did my little TikTok about Dadaroma, about them being one of my favorite bands. And somebody was like, I've never heard music like this before. And I was just like, this is just basic, what? New metal sound? What do you mean? For the younger generation, it's like they've never heard it. So there are some people who just need to be exposed to that type of music, but a lot of the examples that we're showing are going to be older examples because as far as broader scale, nobody is making rock like that anymore. Part of, I guess, growing up is realizing that that was a time and that time has passed. Right now, I would say the very popular sound in Japan is not even right now, it's usually consistently electronic music. Japan consistently has electronic music as its center. Right now, a lot of the modern Visual Kei bands are really leaning into the electronics. When they are making rock music, they're making rock music that has some electronic or pop mixed into it. That paired with some HD quality Visual Kei videos, which I still do watch. It's very nice to watch because it's like, wow, man, Visual Kei in HD. They're appealing to their own people first and foremost. And the sound that they're playing, I feel like it's even more underground now because rock isn't even close to being the most popular genre in the world presently. I feel like it's pop and hip hop. And that's fine for that to be their priority because I don't think it's ever not been. We benefited off of the fact that they were being inspired by Western bands. And now the newer groups seem to be being inspired by a combination of, I would say maybe pop music artists around the world are still an inspiration for Japanese artists just in general, not even just rock. And a lot of newer Visual Kei bands have gotten inspiration from older Visual Kei bands. They grew up listening to these older Visual Kei bands, so their source of inspiration is completely different. It's Japanese mostly. If that makes sense. When you have their inspiration being mostly Japanese, of course the sound is going to sound different than the bands in the past where their inspiration was mostly Korn or Nirvana. There are some people in Gen Z, a very, very small amount of Visual Kei Gen Z fans that are getting into newer Visual Kei music. A lot of them are playing, what's the name of that type of music? It's like a very fast, it's like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I don't know what to call it. For some reason, that sound is still keeping a pretty decent amount of fans. I would still say it's really underground, but that specific area of rock is keeping a decent amount of fans because even Japanese Visual Kei bands are replicating that sound and growing off of that sound. There's one band in particular that does that sound. I wouldn't say I like them, but I get why they have fans. They're also very nice to look at. Visuals are definitely visualing. When it comes to this idea of Visual Kei being dead, I don't think Visual Kei is dead because the style, there's definitely back and forth whether the style is what makes Visual Kei or the music. I feel like it's more so the style, especially nowadays. There's a lot of Visual Kei groups that are doing like really experimental hip hop stuff where I'm just like, I don't even know how to categorize it. I think the style is a huge part of Visual Kei. Visual Kei is not dead because Japan has not said it's dead. There are band members still saying, hey, let's be a Visual Kei band. They still have their fans visiting. They still have their concerts. We don't know most of the stuff that goes on over there. Only about 1/200th of Visual Kei information do we get over here in the West. There's so much going on that we just completely aren't a part of as Western fans. So I don't think Visual Kei is dead. I think it's more underground than it used to be. I don't think it's reaching the United States as much. Kizu is proof that it can still be done. But I do think the type of music, the idea that that is going to come back into visual kei, I think is dead. Times have changed and the sound has changed. And I think the fact that the sound has changed is proof. The music really isn't the foundation. I feel like it is mostly the way that you dress. And then even if you transition out of the style, if you started as a visual kei band, you can still keep the title if you would like to. Because I think groups like SID didn't keep the title of being a visual kei band. I definitely don't want to act like no Japanese bands currently want to reach a Western audience. That's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is to say that the sound has changed that visual kei bands make nowadays, so it may not be appealing to older visual kei fans in the West. There are bands that are still trying to reach a Western audience, but they're trying to do it with the sound that is popular in Japan. Acme is one of those groups. I went to go see them in their first New York concert for the sake of seeing them perform. They were wonderful. Their stage presence was wonderful, their performance was wonderful, and I like live music anyways. It's not that I don't wish them any success, I just think that it's probably going to be maybe 1 out of 10 that come out that I'm actually going to enjoy. The climate of music all over the world is just going to continue changing, and sometimes it pops in my head. Sometimes I'll be like, oh my god, visual kei is dead. When I watch like a really bad PV and the music sounds awful but everybody looks great, then I have to remember to myself, okay, this isn't for you. You're just a bystander. If a group decides to go overseas to appeal to an American audience, I cannot believe I just took one pair of glasses off and put on another. That's wild. If a group decides to come to America because they want to spread their music across the world, I'm benefiting from that. But I am not the target audience of visual kei, and I never have been. So I think it goes without saying that because I am dissatisfied with the current state of visual kei, I am just leaning back on the older bands that I've always listened to. I know I have this series on this channel called Visual Kei ABCs. I do plan on picking that back up and finishing it off. I'm super excited because it's like, I know at least most of these bands will have a sound that I like. I don't know who specifically I'm talking to because I could be talking to a mix of different people. People that are like, what are you talking about? Visual kei sounds as great as it's ever sounded. Or people who are just now getting into it that are like, what are you talking about? Or maybe I'm talking to some fans that are just like, yeah man, I just listen to the same older bands. Or heck, maybe I'm talking to some people who are actually okay with the newer visual kei sound and aren't bothered by it. But I will say that I will probably continue to make YouTube videos about the older music unless a gem comes, like Kizu, unless a gem comes. And Kizu's walking a fine line right now. I talked about this on TikTok. I'm not gonna talk about it on YouTube, but they're walking a fine line. Anyways, see you guys later. I have no idea what my next video is gonna be about. Let me pause OBS.